Welcome into our weekly preview show. We'll take a look at last weekend's road win at Maryland and look ahead to the quick turn this Friday, Nebraska versus Minnesota. Damon, I want to talk about this road win against Maryland because when I talked to you about Michigan State, the first word you said was resolve. What do you think this team is learning about itself through the adversity they're going through week in and week out that's translating to wins?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is that the game is 4 quarters, right? I mean, as long as there's time on the clock, there's a chance to win as opposed to finding a way to lose. And I think once you make that kind of transition in your mind, emotionally, anything's possible, right? You know, I always joke, it's not even a joke. I'm serious when I say resolve is portable. You can take it anywhere you want. I think they're actually using it as a weapon now where it's like, hey, we've got time on the clock. We've done it before. Now they're putting it in the positive Rolodex side as opposed to, oh, no, what could go wrong? And I looked at the body language, and, I mean, you're there. You've got a great vantage point of it. At no point did they act like they weren't going to find a way to win that game, which is pretty impressive for a team that hadn't had a ton of success going into this season in those type of settings.
Yeah, the way you use your binoculars, I've got to use my 15 zoom on my phone. But I do. I look down on the bench, and I'm seeing who's leading the charge. And I'll show you some videos after this, but it was really interesting to see this week who it was that was doing that. But when we talk about adversity, we haven't spoke his name a whole lot this season because he's the obvious playmaker. But Dylan went through his own share of adversity against Maryland. What has he shown you in the last 2 weeks? Not just about, we know his physical capabilities, but we talk about him as a leader, but he's only a sophomore. To see it in real live action play out in the way it has the last 2 weeks, what are you seeing from him?
Yeah, it's like he took last year in those 3 phases of the season, right? The early success and then kind of and then, I'm showing some flashes again as how he finished the season. We saw all that in display in one game where – you know, he had the highest of the highs. They get out 14-0. It looks good. And Nebraska's rolling to, the third pick, the pick 6. I didn't get the ball out of bounds, to game-winning drives. And so I think his confidence and his ability to want the ball back and his competitiveness have kind of added to the lore. It's easy kind of as the face of the program, poster child, to assume that, but having to go through it and add that to the chapter of the book that you're writing is going to be so useful because, you know, it's a real life tangible example of it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And nobody's really going to talk about the other stuff as long as you're continuing to rack up W's towards the end of the season. And so I think for him, the competitive spirit and finding a way, will really be advantageous for him. And I think he's got to understand that 4 of the 5 interceptions he's thrown are all on similar, did we turn in, do we turn out, right? They all look the same in terms of communication with his receivers. And if I'm him and I look at the bottom line in terms of interceptions thrown, that's fixable. That's something that's communication. That's understanding where your receivers are going to be. And it's no coincidence that 4 of the 5 do look like that.
Yeah.
So I think for him, you just keeping on and knowing that what you have done is correctable. And even the 5th, which wasn't whether I'm sitting down inside or outside, it's a ball that was ill-advised and should have been out of bounds.
Yeah.
That's also within his control. So I think for him, it's a total next play mentality, and I think he's up for it.
Yeah, and I want to ask you specifically about the last drive. You throw 3 interceptions, and then he comes out in that last drive essentially with the game on the line and makes 4 ridiculous throws. What does that tell you about the trust in his physical abilities about, okay, I know what I need to go do in this moment without being a little shy from what happened in the game?
Yeah, I love it. It just further demonstrates his ability to stay in the moment, right? And he knows plays like that don't happen without everybody doing their 1 of 11, right? Guys got to handle it up front. Receivers got to go get it. I think his ability to just go out there and flush it, whether it's good or bad, I think is a key component that you want from quality quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it was the 2-minute drill for Nebraska on both sides of the ball that showed up on Saturday. What kind of confidence does that inject into a team when both sides of the ball are getting it done in the biggest moment?
Yeah, it's crucial, and I think they're checking off like all the narrative checkpoints, like kind of game by game. Remember, we spent 6, 7, 8 years haggling and kind of picking low-hanging fruit and having these shticks about, well, who would you want to have the ball last? You know, the offense with the trying to go get the lead or the defense trying to protect it. And inevitably you get to, well, I don't want either. Like, you know, we've seen them invent ways to lose. So I think as they continue to cross off all these narratives that have kind of been their bugaboos, they understand that while people associate past failures with just being without being team specific, these guys now understand that's no longer their burden to bear. They're writing a new chapter. They can stay right here, and I think it'll pay dividends.
You know, as I was watching the game in real live time on Saturday, I was reminded of a couple things that we're no longer talking about, similar to what you just said, but all about the offense. 1, yards after catch, making guys miss and blocking on the perimeter. All things that have elevated drastically, whether it was from the end of last season, Coach Holgerson talking about it, to even this first week of this season being like it's not good enough. Why do you think all 3 areas of that game on offense have really elevated this season?
I think it's a lot of it is points of emphasis, right? It's just, if we want to be the type of offense that we talk about being, these are just some base prerequisites we've got. You know, winning one-on-ones, taking care of the ball, limiting penalties. And each game is an opportunity to improve on that. It wasn't too long ago I was harping on all the solo tackles that Michigan had against Nebraska. And I'm like, hey, if these wide receivers and running backs want to play out in space, you've got to find a way to win these one-on-ones. As they've kind of ascended, it has been intentional, right, where they put these guys in situations in practice with 1v1s and good on good and really getting after it, where it's no coincidence that when you look at their yards after catch and things like that, it is attention to detail. And listen, it has to be outcome specific, right? What you want to have happen, you have to be intentional in how to get it. And they clearly have been intentional in practice.
Does that tell you more about the coaching and coaching philosophy, or the relationships that these players have with their coaches, that what we hear them say in press conferences, we're watching be executed on a Saturday? Yeah,
I think they go hand in hand, right? You clearly have to trust what the people are telling you in order to go out and want to execute it. But then when you visualize the success, you kind of want more, right? Okay, hey, what's next? You said this was going to happen if I did this, and I've seen it come to fruition. Hey, give me more, give me more. It goes from, and I talked about this after getting to the bowl game last year. I said, you go from what's next to what's possible. And it's a huge jump in mindset. And I think this team is now, we kind of laughed then. Maybe it's not so funny now. We'll see as the season wears on. But I think now they're starting to talk about, okay, what's possible.
Yeah, well, something that you mentioned that you thought was possible going into the week was kickoff return being a huge difference maker, and that it was Kenneth Williams having the 85-yard kickoff return. What did you see from him on that run that was so impressive, and why were you feeling it going into that game?
So I just, you chart Maryland kicking the ball off and not getting it into the end zone. That was number one. Like Nebraska was going to have a few opportunities at it. But number two, I felt like there were specific examples that Nebraska could use in cut-ups where kickoff returns were close to breaking. So it was just like a perfect storm. They had been close. You hit it this way or you veer this way as opposed to this way. And some of the outcomes in earlier games could have been different. I think the fan base is probably like, yeah, there were some that we felt like we could have ripped off.
Yeah.
So they were intentional about what to do next if the opportunity presented itself. And it did. And so the cool thing that I think this special teams is doing is situationally they're very opportunistic. They're not just looking for ways to get better during the week. They're looking for ways to exploit the opponent. And what a difference a year makes, right? Where you're not just focused on – we're not having press conferences over mechanics, right? Sometimes we just got to be able to snap it and hold it and get the ball. It's like –
yeah, we're past that.
It was frustrating, right, to hear, but it was what it was. And so to now see where they're going to a place where they can actually attack weaknesses or perceived weaknesses on film and they go exploit it has been fantastic. And listen, I think this week it's in the punt return game. If Minnesota has to be very cognizant of where they punt this football because Nebraska's going to have some opportunities to get one, and I look for them to get one in the punt return game.
Yeah, we heard it here first, sounds like. Were you able to feel that stadium and feel that atmosphere from your vantage point on Saturday?
Yeah, it was incredible. And I'm above the side. I couldn't see where the press box was, but I looked across from me.
Yes.
And, speaking of binoculars, I couldn't believe it. It was a little hard for me because I don't tune my own binoculars. I need to grow the heck up and figure that out. I don't know why I would ask somebody else to use their eyesight to tune my binoculars, but it's close enough where I can do the rest.
Yeah.
But I'm like, wait a minute, that's not Maryland across the red. That was Nebraska, and it was the whole section. So you could feel the vibe. And every time the players would come to the sideline, like they were the Go Big Reds and the black shirt, just the chants, I'm thinking, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And for Coach Rule to have the wherewithal, like real time, would have been easy to celebrate in that locker room and know that you pulled one off on the road. It's, hey, let's go back and celebrate with these guys. They played a key role. I could not believe the amount of Nebraska fans and the energy they brought.
I went down there for warm-ups, and when the specialists or even just the quarterbacks take the field a little bit ahead of the rest of the team, the stand started to stand up, and I was like, oh, maybe Maryland's coming out. That's cool, whatever. It took me a full 2 minutes to realize those are all Husker fans over there, and to see it fill in more and more as the game went on. To go down there on the last drive, I had to stand on Maryland's sideline, but I could only think, what does Maryland think right now? Genuinely, what is Maryland thinking right now?
Were you surprised that we saw so few players
on the
before
field
the game?
Yes, and they were wearing,
what was going on?
And they were wearing bright yellow, and so you knew when they weren't out there.
I was like, where's Maryland?
Yeah, so that's also when I was like, maybe they're not. These are Nebraska fans. Yeah, it really was a moment that I've told multiple people since. It felt like a unifying moment where I saw someone share after the game. As much as these two silently go at each other, the fan base and the team, they both need each other more than they think.
Yeah, 100%.
And that was a moment where it felt like this might have been a turning point.
It's like siblings, right? It's like only they can talk bad about me. Everybody else, we're gonna protect this house.
Yeah. I don't think anyone expected it, and that's what made it really special.
You're gonna see it again in Minnesota because the quiet vitriol and disdain for one another, I think, will be fantastic to watch.
Yeah, well, let's get to that Minnesota game. What kind of challenges are you seeing from this Minnesota team that Nebraska will have to keep an eye out for?
So there's two things right off the bat. I think Drake Lindsey is a big-time prospect. He's a big, strong-arm kid. And I think they're going to want to, listen, they throw the ball 58% of the time, which to itself, you say Minnesota, 58% of the time the ball is in the air. That's got to get Nebraska's attention because what you're thinking is this fool's gold? Is this who they really want to be? And we heard Coach Butler allude to he thinks it may be a little bit of fool's gold that multiple weeks in a row they've seen run game packages that they had not seen before from teams. All of a sudden, you get run game packages from Bryce Underwood. Now, they found a way to slow Childs down, but they had to neutralize the way that Michigan State used Frazier. And then Malik Washington with very few design QB runs. 2 out of the first 6 plays they ran were design quarterback runs. So they get in 13 personnel with 1 back and 3 tight ends, and it's like, what Maryland team is this? So I think the fact that they're very cognizant of what Lindsey brings to the table, but in addition to who Minnesota really is, are a couple of early things to look for. Neutralize Lindsey and make sure that you aren't, I say it almost every week, don't be the medicine that cures what's ailed Minnesota.
Did you like how Coach Butler addressed it yesterday? Like, hey, we know you're probably going to run on us, so bring it on.
Yeah, I think, listen, everybody – I'm a big address the elephant in the room guy. Yes, I'm going to take it head on. I want to know where I stand. Let me get a chance to make it right. So I don't mind that at all. And I think, with Fleck's success, and he's 6-1 against Nebraska, he's won 5 in a row, and they've done it a certain way, right? I joke, it's not really funny, but listen, they came in here with 60 guys on the roster and won. They ran it down Nebraska's throat, and they hadn't been spectacular up until then. So, listen, all bets are off when these two teams meet, especially up there. And so they will have Nebraska's full attention, and I'm glad they have Coach Butler's full attention because he's not one of those guys that I worry about very many things sneaking up on.
Let's talk about Minnesota's defense real fast. They're in the upper half of this conference in interceptions. They have 3 defensive touchdowns. When you hear the players and coaches talk about them, they describe them as a very sound defense. What do you see from this defense that makes this Minnesota defense sound?
Coach Collins is a great coach. He's the longest tenured coach on Coach Fleck's staff. He's a heck of a recruiter, ascended to the role of defensive coordinator. So I kind of know what he's about. And I think schematically they're always going to be sound. They've got guys that are in the right place. I know what they're looking for on the recruiting trail from a temperament standpoint. The thing that's been a little surprising about this Minnesota team is they're struggling to tackle, which, again, knowing Coach Collins and his personality and how they want to play up there, I'm sure that's driving them crazy. But schematically, I think they're pretty good. They're very good at disguising coverage. They play some inverted cover too. They're very good pre-snap in terms of messing with the eyes of the quarterback. So I think Nebraska will have to be sound. But if the thing that jumps out at the page off me the most right now is they're having the same conversation Nebraska fans and media were having early in the season. Is this scheme or is it execution?
Yeah.
And I think so far for Minnesota, the scheme is fine. They've got to execute better.
Okay, from a schematic standpoint, I feel like I'd be remiss if I don't bring up the hometown kid, Emmett Johnson, this weekend. Are there things schematically that you think he can take advantage of from Minnesota's defense? And also on that, what the mindset that Emmett has to have going into this game?
Yeah, so I think the number one key for him is to control his emotions. Yeah. You can be dialed, you can be focused, but you have to be who you are. And anything more than that is you're differentiating from the game plan because it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And so he's got to stay within himself and harness those emotions. That's not always easy to do, especially when it's kind of a homecoming thing and you feel slighted, right? Now, you can use negative motivation in small doses. I don't know how sustainable it is unless you're Tom Brady because he's told the story about the chip on his shoulder for 23 years.
Yes.
So he's made it work.
Yes.
Emmett, on the other hand, can do what you can do.
Yeah.
The one thing, the interesting matchup for this is Emmett has been very elusive and patient in terms of making guys miss. He's got to understand, continue to trust the integrity of the play. He's so good with his patience before he does what he's doing. He's got much better at when he makes moves in space, he's gaining ground. He's not just busy being busy. Minnesota will allow you some opportunities to get free with that first initial defender. It's what he does after that I think will be the key. But number one, he's just got to stay within himself emotionally.
When you hear him tell just after the game, he's just seeing the field better. What does that start to click for a back, or how much work is going on behind the scenes for him to really develop that part of his game?
I love the fact he said it because a lot of being an upper echelon back is not just about individual talent; it's about vision. And sometimes I'll use the term feel. And he used both, where he says he's seeing it better. That's where you understand timing. How long to press the point of attack, smooth to the hole, speed through the crease. Where are the free defenders? Where am I most vulnerable when we're blocking duo to a 3-by or whatever it is? The more reps he has, the better feel you get. The better feel you have, the more natural you can be. So it all goes hand in hand. But with the increased volume from a guy that was kind of dusted off the scrap heap halfway through last season, he's now starting to get the reps where he's just now actually getting into a lather.
Yeah. Well, you guys spoke to Ryan Barnes this morning, covers Minnesota. He shared this might be the least physical O-line Minnesota's had in a very long time. And then yesterday you hear Coach Butler be very clear about what he expects from his defense. He wants the quarterback to feel them 5 times minimum.
Yeah.
If they're able to do that early in this game, what kind of game can this turn into?
So I think you want Minnesota to have to play catch-up from a physicality standpoint. That means drop back, where they can't use run action, where they're not getting the ground game going to keep the secondary at bay. They've had a considerable amount of drops, and so the more hits that you can get on Lindsey, the more confidence starts to creep into this deal. And it's not a team that I think you want playing from in front. You want them playing from behind, given the fact that you think you can take advantage of some things from guard, center to guard area against them. Now, listen, they may have some newfound resurgence. Seeing Nebraska may bring out the best in this offensive line, but you have to start with the physicality up front if you truly want to get this into the fourth quarter.
The difference maker this weekend against Minnesota will be?
I'm going to go with Nebraska's defensive line. I think they have got to be able to make some hay. I like Minnesota's tackles. There's been some inconsistency in the passing game. They have not been able to get the ground game going. Again, don't be the recipe for Minnesota's ground game to get healthy. The difference will be Nebraska's defensive line.
Yeah, we'll see when Nebraska looks to exercise some demons in Minneapolis on Friday.